All right, thanks. So I want to move on from that last exchange and ask about some board issues. So who can take those questions?
It depends on the nature of the question.
Well, who goes to the board meetings?
The board meeting is attended, board members obviously, and members of the NRFC executive team.
So how many members of the executive go to the board?
That will depend on board meetings. But
do you go?
I do go, yes.
That's good. And how many times has the board met?
The board has met 10 times since it was established in September of last year.
10 times. Have all members been present to these meetings?
Senator, I'd need to take that question on notice.
Do any external people come to the board meetings?
Senator, there are instances where external members have been invited to come and either provide a presentation to the board or address the board.
Has the Minister been to a board meeting?
Yes, Senator, the Minister has.
Okay. And members of his office?
The Minister was accompanied by members of his staff when he attended the board meeting.
Now, how many times?
The Minister has attended the first board meeting.
One meeting with members of staff. Okay. Why were there two meetings on the 18th of September?
Senator,
last year?
Yeah, Senator, the board meeting schedule was determined to allow the corporation to meet the legislative requirements of the Act.
I think the Australian Financial Review had a story about this. Do you know about that?
If we're referring to the same story, I'm aware there has been some commentary.
About the 18th of September meeting?
There has been some commentary, yes, Senator.
And it was described as a strange meeting. Why was it strange?
I wouldn't agree with that statement, Senator.
So why were the two meetings on the same day?
Senator, as I just said, the meetings of the board have been scheduled to allow the corporation to meet its legislative obligations.
I don't understand what that means. I can't think of any legislative obligation that would require one board to meet twice on the same day. What's the obligation you're referring to?
Senator, the legislation requires the board to meet 6 times in one calendar year.
And so you have one meeting, then a sham meeting to make up the numbers. I'll take that as a yes. Well, that's disappointing.
I'll just use the
Why couldn't the...
I'm just going to use the chair's prerogative, which I very rarely do.
More interference.
I so rarely do it. But that's a calendar year requirement, and the board was fully constituted in around
the board,
November, January, something like
Senator,
that.
the board was officially established on the 18th of September 2023. The legislation, as I said, requires 6 board meetings per calendar year, and there is no provision in the legislation for a prorated amount depending on when the Act commenced.
Okay, so you've had 2 sham meetings.
Well, they're not sham meetings, Senator Bragg.
Here we go. Interference again. I've never seen you so defensive.
What was the duration of each meeting?
How long does the sham meeting go for?
The official has explained that there's a requirement for the board to meet a certain number of times on establishment. That seems to me like a reasonable thing to do.
When was the corporation established?
Corporation was established on the 18th of September 2023.
And how many board meetings did you need to have in that year?
The legislation requires 6 board meetings per calendar year.
Okay, so September, October, November, December. So you've got 4 months and you've had 2 meetings on the same day. So you've only really had 4 meetings.
Senator, between the 18th of September 2023 and the end of that calendar year in December 2023, the board met on 7 occasions.
Are the directors remunerated?
Yes, Senator.
How much do the directors receive?
Senator, the remuneration's in line with the determination by the Remuneration Tribunal. I don't have that information in front of you. I'll need to take that on notice.
If you could take that on notice, I'd be grateful, because it seems peculiar to me that we'd be remunerating directors to have fake meetings to meet an obligation that they could have met anyway by having the sufficient number of meetings in the time. You can't argue that it would have been impossible to have 6 meetings between September and December.
Senator, the board meeting schedule was determined to meet our legislative obligations and also to accommodate board member availability.
Okay.
Board members met on a number of other occasions outside the formal board meetings to progress a number of matters related to the establishment of the corporation.
Okay.
In particular, the appointment, the search for the appointment of the CEO.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Does the fund have a constitution, or does it operate under its legislation only?
It operates under its legislative framework, and there is a board charter.
Is it board charter? Can directors dial into board meetings, or do they have to be in person?
Board members have attended board meetings both in person and virtually.
Virtually. So you could have had a meeting any time to satisfy the requirement.
Senator, I'm not sure what I can add in relation to
I understand you're in a difficult
previous
position.
remarks.
I don't wish to make you uncomfortable, but these are obviously very disappointing developments that there have been these sham meetings held
They're not
for a fund that hasn't even spent a cent.
Honestly,
No wonder it hasn't spent any money. It doesn't have any meetings.
The board
Has no
is
real
established
meaning.
when sort of September or whatever it is. It has a requirement to meet a certain number of times over the calendar year. The calendar year begins on January the 1st. It ends on December the 31st.
They could have had 6 meetings.
It commences. There is
They
a
can do
much
them online.
there is
They
a
can do them
much
online.
shorter amount of time, and it is an entirely sensible thing to do for the board in a precautionary way to make sure that it meets its statutory requirement. It might be open to the board to argue that it should have a requirement to meet less times, given when it's established. But in order to do that, it has done it the way it has done it. It appears to me that, on the basis of what I've heard the officials say, that the board met in excess of what it is statutorily required to do in any case.
We know you're embarrassed.
I mean, the pejorative, the sort of pejorative.
It's embarrassing for you.
University Liberal Club sort of assault on this
You've spent all this time
is so transparent.
trying to defend
It's
it
really-
because you're obviously embarrassed by
Well,
it.
because
really
it's
not-
in the national interest, Senator Bragg.
Why doesn't it spend any money then?
because
it spent no money.
All right, I'm looking for a question
because
at the
it's all
moment.
about building Australian industrial capability, which deteriorated so significantly
Okay.
over
Yeah,
the
I don't think
last
this has anything to do with the
9
questions.
sordid years
Okay.
of the previous administration.
Back to politics, eh?
Okay.
Back to politics.
It's-
Well, back to the national interest.
Okay.
Back to the
All right.
national interest.
All right.
So my next question is
There is
to
a
move
question.
along, because I'm conscious that the chair doesn't want to dwell on these matters for too long. Are you able to provide on notice the agendas for each meeting?
Senator, I can take that on notice.
Yeah, I'd like to see the agendas of each meeting. Thanks. I think it's important. So, how many applications have been now received for funding?
Senator, as I said, as I said previously, 218 investment proposals have been received by the corporation.
Yeah, and when do you think the organisation will start spending money?
Senator, as I said previously, the corporation is working with urgency, but also with discipline, to make sure that we are in a position to make investments as soon as possible.
Yeah, okay. Okay, well, I think in the interest of time, I think Senator Smith has a couple of questions, and then we can probably dispense with this item.